in Moscow since February, found guilty of drug possession and sentenced to 9 years in a Russian prison. The prosecutors had asked for 9.5 years. The judge is ceding to that demand, 9 years in a Russian prison. She's got 10 days to appeal this case, of course, having become an international flashpoint between Russia, the U.S., at the very moment that the Russian forces invaded Ukraine. And now there are ongoing prisoner swap conversations between Russia and the U.S. We see Brittney Griner there in the docks in that Russian courtroom where she has been this morning. She briefly addressed the court this morning, apologizing, saying it was not her intent to bring drugs into the Russian territory. Let's play a little bit of that.
I made an honest mistake, and I hope that in your ruling that it doesn't end my life here. I know everybody keeps talking about political pawn and politics, but I hope that that is far from this courtroom.
Brittney Griner moments ago. She has now been sentenced officially by a Russian judge, 9 years in prison. I want to turn to our senior international correspondent, Keir Simmons, who's with me here in New York. You've obviously covered Russia extensively. Tell us about this trial, this proceeding. What comes next?
Well, devastating news for Brittney Griner, her family, of course. The maximum sentence that she could have received, Savannah, was 10 years. As you mentioned, the prosecution asked for 9.5 years. We just heard just moments ago the judge announced that it would be at 9 years and a 1 million ruble fine, which is just over $16,000. As you mentioned, she's been told that she can appeal in 10 days' time. But as we heard the judge, and you saw her sitting in that cage there, she had to stand when the actual decision was announced. But you saw her most of the time sitting there, as you see now, her translator there with the short hair and the tie next to her to translate this hearing, this sentencing by the judge. She went through all of the evidence. What she crucially said was that she would find Brittney Griner guilty of conscious smuggling and possession. Now, as you know, Brittney Griner had argued that it was a mistake, that this vape pen was in her luggage, that she didn't mean to bring it, that she understood it was illegal in Russia. Clearly, what the judge here has decided in Russia is that it wasn't a mistake, that she knew what she was doing, and she has sentenced her to 9.5 years in prison.
In point of fact, Brittney Griner had pleaded guilty to the charges, but in this lengthy statement and through her lawyers had argued she didn't do it intentionally. That is an argument the judge has clearly rejected. Yeah. Stand by there with me, if you would. I want to turn to Peter Alexander at the White House, being watched very closely there. The president has received correspondence from Brittney Griner. There has been talk of a potential negotiation now between Russia and the U.S. for a prisoner exchange, a prisoner swap. Brittney Griner, Paul Whelan, another American the U.S. says is wrongfully detained by Russia in exchange for a Russian prisoner. What happens next?
Well, Andrea, certainly the White House was hoping that any verdict would accelerate this process. Russia has indicated that it wasn't until this trial, this court case, was resolved that they would begin in any earnest any conversations about a prisoner swap. You'll remember just last week we heard from the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, announcing what they described as a serious offer that had been presented to the Russians back in June. That offer, as you detailed, was Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan. Paul Whelan, this former Marine who's been, in the eyes of the U.S., wrongfully detained in Russia for years in exchange for an arms trafficker, a convicted Russian arms trafficker, a man by the name of Victor Bout. The Russians dismissed that, and according to the White House, they pushed back with a series of other suggestions. They wanted there to be another individual, a convicted murderer who is now being held in Germany, to be added to the mix there. The U.S. responding to that, describing that as not being a serious counteroffer, one that they say was not done in good faith. Secretary Blinken speaking to his counterpart, the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, just last week. And within the last couple of hours, I spoke to a national security official with the Biden administration who says that to this point, the U.S. says that Russia has not substantively engaged in these negotiations. Their desire in coming public, according to this official, was to try to jolt the process, to get Russia to do more, to engage more earnestly in this back and forth. So it remains to be seen whether this will perhaps be the impetus for that. The U.S., particularly this White House, has been in touch with Brittney Griner's family, the president and the vice president, speaking to Sherelle Griner, Brittney Griner's wife, early last month, and they've been speaking to her wife through other officials within recent days as well, Andrew. Savannah.
Peter, thank you very much. I want to turn to you, Keir. You certainly know these Russian officials. How do you read what is coming out of the Russian government? Sergei Lavrov and Antony Blinken having spoken on the phone for the first time since the war in Ukraine over this matter. And let us not forget that that is the political backdrop here.
Exactly. The Kremlin is negotiating, as the Kremlin does. When I interviewed the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, just a few weeks ago, before the White House had announced that it had made this offer, when I asked him whether Brittney Griner was a hostage, he said she wasn't, and then quickly segued to say, but Victor Bout, this Russian held in America, he is a hostage. So he was openly connecting two cases there. There's no doubt in my mind that the Russians would like to see some kind of a prisoner swap. But of course, they are going to try and get, if you like, to put it bluntly, as much as they can from this. And I think this sentence, 9.5 years, will put the pressure on the White House again. The question is, what exactly does the Kremlin want now? What deal are they prepared to do? Because already the White House has said it is prepared to do a deal.
Yeah, so we'll continue to watch that. And I believe, Peter, the president has now weighed in on the sentence, which we have just reported, 9 years for Brittney Griner, the American, being held in Russia.
Yeah, Andrea, Savannah, that's exactly right, and certainly it demonstrates the urgency with which the White House is addressing this issue and the closeness with which they are watching it. This is from Joe Biden. President Biden says just moments ago, today, American citizen Brittney Griner received a prison sentence that is one more reminder of what the world already knew. Russia is wrongfully detaining Brittney, he writes. It's unacceptable, and I call on Russia to release her immediately so she can be with her wife, loved ones, friends, and teammates. He adds, my administration will continue to work tirelessly and pursue every possible avenue to bring Brittney and Paul Whelan home safely as soon as possible. Savannah, the words of President Biden within the last couple of minutes.
All right. Well, some saw this as a predicate step. The Russians certainly did before a larger conversation potentially about a prisoner swap. We'll continue to follow it from the White House. Peter, thank you. Keir Simmons with me here in New York. Thank you. We'll have much more tonight on Nightly News with Lester Holt. We'll return you now to your regular programming. For most of you, that will be the Today Show. I'm Savannah Guthrie in New York. Have a good day.